The old man walked into the bank just as it was being robbed. He didn't panic, didn't duck. He sat in the corner, pulled a pin from his coat, and began writing on a napkin. The robbers laughed, until one of them read what he'd written: 6 names, a location in Kandahar, and the words, "You're not the first to point a gun at me." The next minute changed everything. Before we begin, tell us where you're watching from. And don't forget to like the video. The branch was quiet that morning, just a few customers, some soft classical music playing overhead, and the scent of fresh coffee from a machine that never quite worked right. Harold, the manager, was halfway through his daily spreadsheet when the door opened and 3 men stormed in. Masks, gloves, 2 pistols, and a duffel bag. On the floor, the leader barked, "Nobody be a hero." Panic hit instantly. A mother shielded her daughter near the teller booth. Harold raised his hands, heart hammering. An elderly woman fainted near the deposit table. But one man didn't move. He sat down slowly on the waiting bench near the windows. His coat was too heavy for the weather, his boots dusty, and his gray hair flattened under an old Navy baseball cap. He pulled out a pen and started writing on a napkin. The robbers didn't notice at first. They were too busy shouting instructions and emptying drawers. But one of them, young, twitchy, he glanced over and saw the old man scribbling calmly. "Hey," he shouted, approaching. "I said no phones. What are you doing?" The old man looked up. His voice was slow, even. "I'm writing a name." The gunman barked a laugh. "Your own? In case we forget to shoot you?" "No," the man replied. "Yours." That stopped him. "What?" The old man folded the napkin and held it out. On it were 6 names. Military style. Rank. Serial-like numbers. A date. A place. Kandahar province. And below that, in printed letters, "This isn't your first mistake." The gunman grabbed the napkin, read it, then froze. His face drained of color. The leader called from the vault. "What's going on?" The kid didn't answer. He was staring at the napkin like it had burned his hands. The old man said, softly now, "You were with Task Unit Hammer. Your CO was Briggs. He died pulling you out of the tunnel system on May 17th. How do you?" the gunman stammered. "You wore the bracelet," the old man said. "Same one you're wearing now." Suddenly, the leader rushed forward. "Drop it. Back off, old man." But the gunman stepped in front of him. "Wait." The old man stood. "You point that gun again, and the next name I write will be yours. But not on a napkin." No one spoke. A customer reached for their phone. Dialed quietly. The sirens came before a single shot was fired. The robbers didn't run. Not after that. And the old man? He walked out before the police even arrived. The napkin stayed behind. And no one knew his name. By the time the police showed up, the robbers were already disarmed. By their own fear, not force. They sat on the cold bank floor, hands above their heads, eyes blank. Harold, the bank manager, kept pointing at the napkin on the counter. "This," he said, "this is what stopped them." Detective Karen Doyle read the names twice. None meant anything to her. But the younger of the 2 suspects kept whispering. How did he know? Over and over, as if the napkin had spoken instead of a man. Security footage showed most of what happened. 3 armed men, a rush inside, panic. But the man in the coat, he walked in just before the robbers. Sat calmly, pulled out a pen, scribbled. No signs of fear, not even when the gun was in his face. Doyle froze the frame where he handed over the napkin. "Zoom in," she told the tech. They enhanced the image. Old hands, scarred knuckles, military-style grip on the pen. She tapped her phone and dialed. "Run facial rec cross-check with any Department of Defense personnel, active or retired." Hours later, the results came in. No match. Not even close. Back at the bank, a reporter from the local station interviewed Harold. He never raised his voice, Harold said. Just spoke like the room was his. A few feet away, the younger robber sat in a squad car, staring into the distance. When pressed, he finally said he knew about Briggs. About the tunnels. About that day we lost radio. "Who is he?" the officer asked. The robber shook his head. I think he's the one who got us out." Meanwhile, across town, in a quiet hardware store, the old man from the bank paid cash for batteries and a roll of duct tape. The clerk didn't ask questions. Something about his presence discouraged conversation. He walked outside, sat on a bench, pulled out a small notebook and began writing again. Not a napkin this time. The first page read, "Recon must never end. If memory fades, evil repeats." He closed the book and walked off toward the bus stop. At Precinct HQ, Doyle was still staring at the footage when a call came through from an unknown number. A male voice, calm and firm. "You're looking for someone you won't find." "Who is this?" "Not important. What matters is that he did your job, without a badge, without a weapon, and without fear." "What's your connection to him?" The voice paused. "He taught me to keep watch." The line went dead. "If this makes you angry, in a good way, type respect in the comments." Detective Doyle couldn't let it go. Something about the way the man had moved, too quiet, too confident. Not reckless, not arrogant. Controlled. Like someone who'd seen worse than pistols and panic. She bypassed protocol and drove to the VA office. An old colleague there owed her a favor. "I'm not supposed to," he said, pulling records, "but you didn't get this from me." She showed him the enhanced image from the bank footage. The clerk leaned closer. "That scar on the left hand, see that?" Doyle nodded. He whistled softly. "Only one file I ever saw had a matching injury. Classified deep. Not even full name listed. Just a code name. War Dog." "You're serious?" He handed her a redacted personnel document. Most of it was black lines. But one thing stood out. Last seen. Forward Operating Base, Kandahar. 2006. Presumed dead. She took the file and left without a word. Back at her apartment, she pinned the napkin photo next to the document. The handwriting was the same. The next day, a retired colonel showed up at the precinct, asking to speak to her. He didn't introduce himself, just placed an envelope on her desk. Inside, one photo. A team of 7 men, dusty and bruised, standing in front of a collapsed compound. One of them, barely visible, stood with his arms crossed, wearing a ball cap and no name tag. "He's not a ghost," the colonel said. "He's the reason half that squad lived. When things went bad, War Dog didn't run. He circled back, pulled the rest of them out." Doyle looked up. What happened to him? "He walked into a mountain with no comms and never came back. Until now." "Why now?" The colonel's jaw tightened. "Because something's waking up. And he never trusted anyone else to notice first." Meanwhile, across town, Frank, if that was his name, sat quietly on a park bench, watching people walk by. Children laughing, parents distracted, phones in every hand but his. He took a small device from his coat. A scanner, not modern, dated, military issue. He flicked it on. It beeped once. He turned it slowly. It beeped again. His eyes narrowed. Someone in the park was carrying a transmitter. He stood and walked toward the hot signal. Not fast. Calm. Unassuming. Until he saw who it was. A man in a maintenance uniform. Unmarked. Holding a trash picker. Frank didn't stop walking. He just said, "I trained you better than this." The man looked up, startled. "War Dog," he whispered. Frank nodded. The man stepped back, eyes wide. "You're supposed to be dead." "I was." Then Frank reached into his coat and pulled out a folded napkin. "Your name's not on here. Yet. Have you ever known someone who carried more than they ever said, until it mattered most? If so, tell us their story. Let's make sure they're never forgotten." The man in the uniform looked like he wanted to run, but Frank's presence held him in place like a memory you can't escape. "I thought you were gone," the man said again. Frank didn't blink. "A lot of people did. That's how I got anything done." They stood in silence. Then Frank said, "What are they planning?" The man hesitated. "You're not cleared anymore." "I don't need clearance. I need answers." Finally, the man exhaled. "They're tracking targets. Former operatives. Anyone who knew the deeper layers of Ghost Command." Frank's jaw tightened. "How many names?" "At least 15. That napkin you gave the kid? That was a warning. The next ones might not be." Frank looked around the park. Children laughing. Sprinklers misting the lawn. A town pretending danger only lived on news channels. But it was here. It had been here the whole time. He walked away without another word. The next day, Frank visited an old mechanic's garage on the edge of town. He knew the man inside, Callahan. Vietnam vet. Quiet. Loyal. Frank knocked once. Callahan opened the door, saw who it was, and grinned. "I told him you weren't dead. You still got the footlocker?" Callahan led him to the back room, pulled up a dust-covered crate, padlocked. Frank entered a code without hesitation. Inside, a map. Hand-drawn. Tunnels, routes. Caches. He tapped a spot marked with an X. "They're starting here." Callahan squinted. "That's near the train depot." Frank nodded. "Same place I trained them to disappear." "They using your own playbook?" "Worse. They're improvising." That night, Frank sat alone with the map spread across his kitchen table. He marked new points. Highlighted patterns. And in the margins, he scribbled something Doyle would one day find. If they take the fight to small towns, it's because big cities stopped listening. But I'm still watching. Meanwhile, Doyle's search deepened. She visited 2 veterans listed in the file of presumed deceased, only to find one had vanished last year. The other? Found dead in a motel outside Phoenix. Cause? Unknown cardiac event. But the surveillance footage showed a man in a janitor's uniform entering his room. Same build as the man from the park. She called a contact in Army CID. "What is this?" she asked. The voice on the other end paused, then said, "Ghost 6 was never meant to be known. If someone's waking the protocol up, they're not just hunting soldiers. They're hunting the memory of what those soldiers did. If you're outraged that those who gave everything can still be hunted in silence, type shame in the comments to stand with them." Frank drove without music. The roads outside town curved through farmland and into deep forest, quiet places, perfect for things no one wanted seen. He stopped at a gravel turnoff, walked 50 yards into the trees, and crouched by a rusted metal box half buried under roots. Inside, a receiver. Military issue. Battery still holding charge. He powered it on. A green light flickered. Then a pulse. 1 beat. Then 2. Then silence. Until a coded tone crackled through. "R for compromised. In, 7 on list. Advised 0 contact. Eisenbound." Frank stared at the message, lips tight. In, 7 wasn't a place. It was a person. And he knew exactly who. Across the country, Detective Doyle reviewed footage from the Phoenix motel. She paused the tape when the supposed janitor looked at the camera. Just once. Brief. Almost deliberate. She enhanced it. And saw something that made her heart stop. A pin. Not a corporate badge. Not a security tag. A silver circle with 4 raised lines, like compass points, but slightly off-center. She typed a quick message to her CID contact. "What is this insignia?" The reply came 2 hours later. Operatives who ran too deep to come back. Symbol was retired with them. Then one more line. "If you've seen this, you're already inside it." Meanwhile, Frank stood in the shadows of the freight depot, just beyond the light posts. He'd spent hours circling it, watching. At 10:17 p.m., a van arrived. No markings. 2 men stepped out, same frame, same blank faces as the ones in the park. They walked the perimeter, checked angles, measured movement. One of them placed a small device near the rear gate. Frank's eyes narrowed. He moved silently until he was 3 feet behind them. "Bad placement," he said. The men froze. Frank stepped into view. "The wind curves east here. Your range would be cut in half." One of the men reached under his jacket. Frank raised his voice slightly. "If you touch it, you'll never pull it fast enough." The man paused. "You don't have the reach anymore," the second one said. "I don't need it," Frank replied. "I taught the next guy how." A shape moved in the dark behind them. The young mechanic, Owen, emerged, holding nothing but a flashlight and a phone. He said, calmly, "Smile for the infrared." The men ran. They didn't get far. Frank never lifted a hand. He didn't have to. He'd already taught someone else how to see danger and make it stop. Have you ever seen someone pass on their strength in silence, without medals, without credit? Let's hear their story in the comments. Some heroes don't retire. They just train others to take their place. After the failed attempt at the freight yard, everything went quieter. Too quiet. Frank knew what that meant. "They're regrouping," he told Owen, who now followed him not just as a shadow, but as a student. When predators retreat, it's not fear. It's calculation. That night, Frank opened a sealed envelope he hadn't touched in years. Inside was a key, unlabeled, iron, military cut. He hadn't used it since 2008. At dawn, they drove 2 hours north, past the county line, past cell towers, into terrain so empty the map forgot it. Then came a shed. Not marked. Not listed. But the lock clicked open with that one forgotten key. Inside, shelves. Gear. Folders. Dusty radios. A wall map with faded pins. And in the center, a corkboard with 10 names, 9 crossed out. Only his remained. "I was the fail-safe," Frank said. Owen asked, "What does that mean?" "It means if someone used what we built for the wrong reasons, I was supposed to dismantle it." He tapped the map. "They're trying to recreate Ghost 6 without the conscience. But they're missing one thing." "What?" Frank turned to him. "Me." Meanwhile, Doyle had reached her limit. Every call to her higher-ups hit a dead end. Every file she tried to access returned insufficient clearance. So she went to the press. Not with names. Not with footage. Just a question. What happens when those we thought gone return to stop what we should have? The article made waves in military forums. Quiet nods. Soft reposts. No confirmations. But in one secure bunker, far from any town, a retired analyst opened a drawer marked inactive and found the photo of a team standing in dust. Frank's face circled. A note added that day. Status, active. Again. Back in Pine Hollow, the mayor stopped Frank on the sidewalk. I read something strange this morning, she said. People saying you were part of something. Invisible. Frank smiled faintly. Everything good usually is. She handed him a note. From someone who said you saved his life. Didn't leave a name. He opened it. Just one sentence. I'll guard the rear, like you did. Frank folded it. Good. That means I can keep walking forward. Some strength isn't in muscle. It's in memory passed on. If someone in your life made you stronger just by how they lived, tell us about them below. Frank stood in the shed, tracing the pins on the old map with a steady hand. Owen watched him in silence. What are we missing? The younger man finally asked. Frank didn't look away. Patterns. They've been random so far. No, Frank said. They want us to think they are. He tapped 3 points on the board. These aren't just incidents. They're echoes of missions. Replicas. Same angles, same entry points. They're recreating old ops? Exactly. The ones that made us legends. But they're leaving out one thing. What? Frank turned. Why we stopped. Outside, the sun hit the pine canopy with a golden silence. But Frank's eyes stayed sharp. Later that day, he and Owen returned to Pine Hollow. And there, at the diner, Frank saw something he hadn't seen in years, another face from the past. An older man, wearing a black jacket with no logo. He didn't speak, just nodded. Frank approached. You're late. The man replied, I was waiting to see if you'd rise. And the man smiled slightly. Still vertical. Still dangerous. They sat in the corner booth. No orders placed. No menus touched. What do they want? Frank asked. Not control. Not power. Then what? Legacy. Frank's jaw clenched. They're twisting what we left behind. They're rewriting it, the man said. One mission at a time. Frank opened his pocket notebook. Drew a new circle. Then it's time for the final page. Owen, watching from across the diner, didn't ask questions. He knew now when silence meant everything. The next morning, a package arrived at Doyle's apartment. No return address. Inside, a burner phone, already on. It rang once. She answered. Frank's voice. They'll hit a federal archive in 2 days. I'll be there. Stay out of sight. Why me? Because someone needs to remember it right. Then the line went dead. At the diner that night, Lainey found another note beneath her register. If I don't come back, tell them I already won. Because I showed someone how to fight without becoming what we fought. When someone teaches others how to protect the world, and then disappears into it, that's not failure. That's legacy. If someone like that shaped your path, drop their initials in the comments. Let's remember them together. The Federal Archive raid never happened. Because when the men arrived, silent, armed, certain, Frank was already there. Waiting. Not with weapons. With proof. He handed them a folder. Inside. Photos, audio, a list of names only ghosts should know. You move forward, he said. This goes public. All of it. They didn't speak. Didn't need to. They walked out and never came back. 3 days later, Frank was gone too. No farewell. No headlines. Only a napkin left on the diner counter. 6 names. 1 word at the bottom. Safe. The town never forgot him. Owen kept walking the perimeter. Doyle kept asking questions. And every month, on the 7th, someone left a folded note on the war memorial. Always blank. But always read. Have you ever known someone who protected without being asked and left without needing applause? Say their name. The quiet ones deserve to be remembered too. If you like this story, please like and subscribe to the channel. Let YouTube promote stories of kindness.